Everyone, I'm Marianne LaMonica, the Chief Curator and Associate Director of the Bard Graduate Center Gallery, and I'm very pleased to welcome you all here tonight for a special talk, which is organized in conjunction with the exhibition Barbara Nessum, An Artful Life. And thank you, Barbara Nessum, for being with us tonight. Tonight's program really came kind of as a natural outgrowth of thinking about the role of women in the world of graphic design and fine art in general, and thinking about some of the context in which Barbara was doing her work, but also thinking about the changes that have occurred over the period from the early 1960s to today. And Ruth Ansel, who is our guest tonight, of course, comes up as one of the giants in the field. Her career has spanned over 5 decades, if that's, it's just an unbelievable feat in and of itself. And her work has been recognized by many, many associations, of course, primarily within the field of the graphic arts, the AIGA, the Art Directors Club. She's a gold medalist. And I think a recent award, which I think is very important, is that a few years ago, in 2009, 2010, 2 women in Scandinavia decided that they were looking for women role models in the field of design and graphic arts. And they started a project called the Hall of Femmes, and that Ruth Ansel was the first person with whom they started their project, and they produced a book of her work in that year, in 2010. Ruth has worked, of course, with all of the greats, focusing primarily with photographers, but not only, from Richard Avedon and Helmut Newton, from Andy Warhol to Bruce Weber, Annie Leibovitz, and Lee Friedlander. And she's going to share with us some of those stories. She became co-art director of Harper's Bazaar in 1963 and has been an art director for countless years, including work at the New York Times, House and Garden, Vogue, Vanity Fair. And in 1992, she founded her own design studio where she produced many books and working with some of the same artists that I've mentioned, and had many clients in a variety of fields. So we are really pleased to have Ruth here tonight. And then I have to say one more thing, which I discovered through Barbara and then later through Ruth, that our speaker on December 4th will be Gloria Steinem, and it will be in a conversation with Barbara Nessum, because Barbara and Gloria Steinem were roommates in the mid-1960s, and it turns out that their upstairs neighbor was Ruth Ansel. So 22 West 56th Street must have been a hotbed of activity, and unfortunately it was recently razed to make way for another building, but that's another. So that's another New York story. But I'm really, really delighted to have come to know the work and to know Barbara, and now to know the work and to know Ruth Ansel. So welcome to the Bard Graduate Center.
Thank you for that stunning introduction. I can't remember half of it, so you'll have to forgive me if sometimes we go through some of these slides and I say, and that is, and then I forget who the name is. But you just have to kind of fill it in for me.
Rose, you have to talk into the mic.
Can you not hear me?
No.
No.
Move it.
Is it on?
Yes.
Okay. Is it better now? Is it better now? Because I'm going to have to look down and up sometimes.
That's good. Barbara, is it good for you? Yeah.
Can you hear anybody?
I'm Liz sitting right
The
here.
worst thing in the world. No, I want to know if people in the back, can you hear if is that better?
Good.
Okay.
Okay. I'm not going to shout because I'll sound very shrill. Okay, so, I mean, I have to confess that I'm a designer who happens to be a woman, or a woman who happens to be a designer, but I never kind of spent any time thinking about the equation of how one influenced the other until very, very late recently, when these two Swedish young girls called me and said, you know, we want to interview you because we're interested in talking about women who we discovered we haven't found who are mentors to women designers in different areas of the world, because men seem to have made, you know, they seem to have no glass ceiling, and women seem to have glass ceilings. And I at first was reluctant because I said, oh, please please put me in that category of women designers, you know. But then I realized after they did interview me and we did this book, which is a very tiny little booklet, part of a series of women designers. I don't have all the names of, you know, one was obviously Paula Scher, one was Miyuchi something or other, a wonderful woman who recently died. One is Karen Goldberg. One is Tomoko Miho. You know Tomoko Miho, I'm sure, a great, great designer. Leila Vignelli is another one. Janet Froelich is another one. So it's good company, you know, it's good company. And they were very brave to do that. But God bless Sweden, because they the government gives money to these projects. These girls couldn't have done it without it. And then I thought, where the hell is this country if we can't even, you know, do that for our arts program? So I felt awakened a little bit, because I felt I was happy to be a part of it, and I've been back there. They gave 2 symposiums, and they do, you know, they did a great job. I didn't even know that Sweden only had 10 million people. I mean, it's a tiny, tiny amount of people, and a great country. So, you know, I learned a lot about having no opinions until you know more. So anyway, I'm going to try to do this so that I don't waste a lot of your time going through story after story after story, because we'll be here forever. I'm going to try to kind of give you a sense of what, in each case, had the most influence on me and why, and then I'll kind of show the images. And if you have any questions when I go through it, just, you know, kind of remember, and we'll hopefully have time to discuss it. So I'm going to read a little bit and then try not to read too much. The thing that I wanted to read was just the general sensibility of what I think. I mean, I did magazines most of my life. I didn't do advertising. I tried to do advertising. I got fired. I mean, because I'm not good at trying to sell what I don't believe in. I'm just not good at it. And you have to be, you know, Mad Men shows you that. You have to be really scheming and crazy, and really you have to have some kind of secret life yourself, and I didn't have any secret life. And I couldn't do it. I just got fired. And so I loved magazines because it was the closest thing to my first love, which was as a kid growing up in the Bronx, fleeing from my household of yelling parents. I mean, fleeing from my household. I went to my local movie house as often as I could to dream. You know, it was my dream place where I could imagine what life was, thinking that was real, and my house wasn't. Unfortunately, it was the opposite. But nonetheless, that stayed in my mind. All those images, those moving images of all those wonderful people and all those exciting narratives, really was the core of the influence of what led me to magazines. Whoa! Uh-oh. I don't know. Do I have this? What have I done? I knew that would happen. Something. Can you get it? Okay. Whoa, flinging my arm left. So, is that okay? Yeah. Okay. All right, I'll be quiet. So that was, that was the key. That's the key to the reasons that I got involved in magazines. And the other thing is, I won't touch it. I promise. I won't touch it. The other thing is that, coming from this country, which is a country all about motion and moving forward and changing identities, it's a country where, we're all one level away, from trying to find out who we are by experimenting. And that hasn't, that hasn't changed very much from very early on. And magazines give you the opportunity to dream that possibility. They give you the opportunity to explore what it is about that dream life that you'd like to enter, what it is about that dream life that doesn't make any sense, but what about that is something that forms the illusion of reality, because all of these places are illusions of reality, especially when they say this is about real people. It's not about real people. Even if they make it look real, it's not. It's about illusions, and that's kind of interesting for me. So it's about appealing to your imagination and transporting you and seducing you. That's really what magazines, like the ones I worked with, are about. Not obviously all magazines, but that's what the background is, the nucleus of what interested me. So I became an art director very early by accident, in a sense. I came out of a fine arts background. I never studied graphic design. And I went straight to HARPER'S Bazaar. And I wanted to work with Henry Wolf. I knew about Henry Wolf. I never looked at Vogue with the same love that I looked at HARPER'S Bazaar with. It just happened as a young girl. That's what happened to me. So I knew about Henry Wolf, looked him up, and he wasn't at Bazaar. He was at Show magazine. And I went and saw Henry. I can't remember. I think I'm doing it again. I think Henry knew about me because I was for a brief moment married to Bob Gill, who was a very extraordinary illustrator and teacher. And our marriage lasted under a year. It was like a nanosecond marriage. I don't know what that was about, but it was short. Not sweet, but short. Anyway, so Henry said, oh, God, I don't have anything for you, but you should go back to HARPER'S Bazaar. There's a fellow there named Marvin Israel, and I think he has an opening. Go there. So I called, went to Marvin. Marvin had hired Bea Feitler, who was his star pupil from Parsons, where Marvin taught. And I walked into the art department, showed him this dreadful portfolio, which was really like, I can't even explain how bad it was. And he looked at it, and he loved that I knew nothing about graphic design. He just loved it. He just loved it. And he really was subversive from the beginning, but with a brilliancy that only Marvin could have. And so he hired me. And there was the three of us. And that was the nucleus of everything that started my whole life of understanding. Can you imagine? You know nothing. You walk into a magazine where there's Diane Arbus, Marvin Israel, and Richard Avedon. Can you be luckier? I don't think so. I don't think you can be luckier. So anyway, that's kind of the background. And I'll just go into, I'm going to show you, not in order, I'm going to start with Bazaar, but I'll show you the main issue that I'm most proud of that happened because Dick Avedon is the genius he is, and it happened because we're talking about a time when, 1960s, it was the perfect time for two young girls to be there. Everything was about revolution. Everything was about women who were on the pill. Everything was about sexual freedom. It was amazing time. Everything was about, rock music, entering on the highest level. Did we know that the Beatles would be the geniuses that they are today? No, but they were. Did we know Bob Dylan would be the genius poet that he is today? No, but there he was. So it was this time when, Kennedy was the president. We were about to send real people to the moon and do the real moonwalk, and it was extraordinarily exciting. And the magazine, giving them credit for being a women's magazine who appealed to intelligent women, that's kind of great. And I didn't even know that was the level that it was on, but it was that level. So this is the issue. Here we go. If I can do this right. Okay, so that's the beginning. So these are the four words that mean the most to me, distilled down to what it is that I tried to do. And in the business of communication, it was, if you could do only 2 or 3 of them, it didn't work. You had to do all 4. This is the genius, Dick Avedon with Twiggy. Now, this is a fake picture, because this was taken when Twiggy and he were working, and Twiggy never worked for Bazaar. But I love the picture so much and it's so much represented what I saw of Dick doing when I had the opportunity to see him work. He really took, like a great director, he took the part of the model and made the model understand what he wanted, how he wanted it to move, what the attitude was that he wanted of her. I mean, this was just an extraordinary human being who found his calling and got better and better and better at it when he started as a young man. So here's what I think. You can read it. Here's really what John Lahr said, and I think it's the essence of what Dick did as a photographer. And to penetrate the mask, to show what's behind it, is the essential thing that Dick did. And he sometimes used the mask to show what was behind it, because some people use masks and think they're hiding, but they're really showing themselves. And he was able to distinguish that. So this is the 1965 April issue with Dick Avedon edited. The editor was put in a closet, and she was, and she was she was a woman who earned her editorship because her aunt Carmel Snow was the brilliant editor before her who Dick had worked with, and then Carmel, I think through too much alcoholism or whatever, couldn't continue, and Nancy White was made the editor, and Dick just rolled right over because he was, Dick, and so he said, "I'm going to be the editor, and I have this idea, and this is what we're going to do," and it was a moment for me to be drawn into everything that was great about thinking, reflecting the time you were living in, understanding how that affected fashion, because really, fashion photographs are really portraits of women. That's what they are. And if you get that, and these photographs are really good, that's why you love them so much or don't remember them. So this is the iconic cover. And the story goes, and it is true, Dick had done a photograph of Jean Shrimpton, that's who that is, in a hat that he had constructed by a famous hat designer. And we were ready to go to press, and Dick hated the hat and the picture. And I mean, I'd never seen him like that, because, you think Dick loves everything he does because he's a genius. And he said, Ruth, we have to fix this. I hate it. I just, so we were in the art department, Bea, myself, and Dick. This never happened before or since. It was 2 a.m. We were drinking a lot of wine and whatever the hell it was, and getting nowhere. And and this thing was due in the morning to go to the printer. And at one point, I just picked up a scissors, and started to cut out of a flat piece of paper this thing which was covering this ugly hat. and everybody went, oh. And I stopped, and it pasted it down, and it went to the printer. And the best part of it is that that was pasted onto the, it was really unfair, pasted onto the newsstand covers, because they couldn't afford to give it to every person who had a subscription, which I think is totally awful. I mean, people who had subscriptions were the people who believed in you, but they didn't get that blinking eye. Anyway, so this was a magazine that really had to do with the times. Let's see if we were trying to do for the first time, and it didn't quite work, because the publishers hated it, and you'll see probably why. It went very, very far in trying to create a new fashion magazine where features were opposite fashion, where there weren't segregated sections, where great writers were writing things that had to do with clothing or the idea of beauty. And it was just breaking apart the old way of doing things and trying to present a new, fresh way. And that background is another serendipitous point. Dick had the picture against no seam, and he hated it. And, you don't hate, I didn't know what the hell to do. And I ran downstairs to a newsstand and this is crazy, because I don't necessarily run down to newsstands and look at comic books. And I happened to see this comic book, and it looked like it had to do with space. I ran back up, opened up a page, had this in a little frame, blew it up, and that was what went behind there. So, the idea of being able to have that freedom, and the idea to know that you're working with somebody who is far superior than you are in terms of their ability to be creative was so thrilling. And, it worked. It worked, and it was so simple. And again, these were real astronaut suits. They wouldn't dream of loaning them to anybody today, but in those days, those were the real astronaut suits. Amazing. These were just examples of the way we decided to do very great. There's Bob Dylan looking like a baby. Nobody quite knew who Bob Dylan was in those. That was very early, except if you were a young person. And these were not so successful dresses made for the op-ed idea of moving fabrics back and forth, but they were made. And then there's this horrible story that goes with this, horrible in the sense of we think we're living in hard times now with a black president where half the country hates the black president, which is true. This girl, Danielle Luna, was from the Midwest, beautiful, light-skinned black girl. And she was wearing a very well-known designer named Galanos's beautiful couture clothes. He lived in California, and he considered himself as grand as great designers in Paris. And when he saw that this was how his clothes were photographed, he had a fit. I don't want my clothes photographed on a black girl. What are you doing? What are you doing? I won't have it. And he really, I'm pulling all my advertising, blah, blah. And Dick convinced this guy to shut up. And these beautiful, beautiful, absolutely non-threatening on any level photographs ran. And that's the power of working with somebody who really knows what they're doing and who can convince those folks who are fearful to just back off. And sometimes, he didn't always win, but he won a lot of the time. And I at that point, I was very friendly with a lot of artists. Roy Lichtenstein was somebody at that point I knew. So that got into the magazine. And it's just when you look at the variety of images and you look at where we were trying to go, I'm very proud of this. Here's the example. I don't know if it works so well, but it's the example of Agnelli over on a sculpture that looks a little like a ball. And Lou Alcindor, who became, what's his name now? Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. That's Lou Alcindor when he was this young basketball star that somebody knew enough to be wise enough to tell us to photograph. And that was our idea, you know, to just mix all of the passions of things that were going on and understand that that was what was happening in a young society. This was my attempt at silver ink, which I did, but I should have used other colors, and I just didn't. But at least something got on the page. I like the fact that it disappeared as you changed the position of the paper, and it did. And that's Siegel. I went out to his chicken coops in New Jersey, and that's where he worked. He had chicken coops, big, long chicken coops. And I wanted to find a way to use him. And there was no way to use him at first because that chair was part of his sculpture. So we begged somebody in the shoe department to give us a pair of shoes, and we dropped it in the corner, and that's why that ran as a full page. You know, amazing. And that's Gene Shrimpton in Florida in a sand pit looking like the moon. Doesn't really look like the moon. And that's Tisa, not Tisa, one of the Pharaoh sisters. And that's yeah, I forgot her name. Stephanie, exactly, that's Stephanie. And that's Oldenburg sculpture of a dresser. Oh, I'm touching it again.
There you go again.
Oh, Lord. I didn't know this was so... Anyway, okay. He did a whole room, exactly. So we took that and we used that as part of the... So, I mean, just mashing all of the things together was the excitement. Ringo. Now this is Dick again. Dick was a superb collagist. That's a hand from another photograph taken from the shoot because Dick liked it better, and that got put onto. I mean, those were when retouching was really going on, but not going on like Photoshop to totally destroy the meaning of the original intent. And I don't mind Photoshop when it's in the hands of great people. But I think it's a terrible crutch because, you know, who needs it? You know, what do you need Photoshop for if you aren't able to do it in your own imagination, pulling it off in some way or other? Anyway, I probably am wrong about that. Okay, so that was that issue. I was excited, and that issue didn't sell. It was a total failure. Total failure. We got our comeuppance. And Dick, very shortly after that, left. Because he was horribly hurt because of what went on. And also Vreeland had left to go to Vogue. And Vreeland was his mentor. And he was right to get the hell out of Bazaar and go to Vogue. This was another thing that we did. Again, these were all really big breakthroughs. This was the first large-scale head of a male on a women's magazine. I mean, can you imagine in those days that was like people said, "What is this, a mistake? Is this a men's magazine that's called Bazaar? What's going on?" And no, it wasn't. And again, the beauty of this is the beauty of Dick's ability. And when I use all these stories about Dick, it's emblematic of what should happen to all of us who work in the field. Use your head as well as your heart and your ability to be creative, because that's what's going to bring you to solutions like this. And we thought and we couldn't figure out how to get a man on the cover. And finally we came up with the idea of let's use a lot of diamond bracelets, because then the editor can sell ads about, you know, lots of diamonds, and it did work. And this was one of, you know, the smashing covers of the time because, and here's the other thing, if it was Cary Grant, it wouldn't have been as exciting because he would have been expected. I mean, the fact that it was kind of bad boy Steve McQueen in a tux made it make sense. And those are all part of why it works. And this was Dick when he was photographing Funny Face, again, before my time. But that was when I first was aware of Avedon in that sense. This was Audrey Hepburn, that was a collection done in Paris. These were other collections done in Paris. I mean, the graphics of that magazine were really spectacular. And this is the story where Marvin got fired. This was a wonderful model called Daniel Weil, and she obviously didn't look like every other model of the day. And Dick loved her, and Marvin loved her, and they decided to instigate this cover, which looked a lot like Diane Arbus, which was a real slap in the face to Nancy White. I mean, it was really awful. And they didn't tell her about the shoot, so they put this model in a snood and everything that looked like Diane Arbus, and then showed it to Nancy White when it was almost time to go to press. And Nancy had a fit. And she said, "What the hell is this? This looks like a man in drag." And she wouldn't say it looks like Vreeland. She would never say that. And Marvin hit the ceiling and used the F word and cursed her. And she said, "You're fired." And he was fired. And then Bea and I were left in the art department. And that was a moment when again, I have to say, they had a choice. But obviously, the choice was just to, hang on with us till they got a man, and that's surely what they were doing. But we knew that, and we didn't know how long we'd last. But we didn't really think about it so much, and then somehow we lasted. So it became this interesting. Now there are so many photographers who are duos, and so many people who work in tandem. In those days, it was considered quite peculiar, and it certainly isn't peculiar now that we think about, I can't remember some of the names of photo combos that there are, but Finude and Venus and whatever the names are. But they're wonderful, but they're duos. And this is wonderful. I had saved these. These are the retouching, handwritten instructions from Avedon to his guy, who he called Rembrandt. He was really, really great. Bob Bishop. And he wrote these extraordinary, this is again the mind of genius. Genius does everything. Genius takes care of the details as carefully as they take care of the big idea. And that's why they're geniuses. It's why people that we admire are as great as they are. They don't let anything, go. And these were wonderful, like make her beautiful, make her, wonderful instructions. But every instruction was carefully laid out by Avedon. And then this was what ran in the magazine. That was the opening of it. Fun, Then we did something that was a takeoff of, this was, you remember Elizabeth Taylor and what's his name? Richard Burton, when they were having their affair and doing Cleopatra. And you think we have nasty pieces of news about people in Hollywood. This was really nasty. And so we decided to do it like OG, like these paparazzi magazines, because the paparazzi didn't let them breathe. And we did this, created it with Mike Nichols, because Mike Nichols was over there, according to, I learned later, interviewing them because he wanted to do Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. And he wanted to find out if he could cast them and how right he was. So this was the fun we had in Paris. And when those pages went through, a lot of people wrote and said, "What the hell are you doing? This doesn't look like, what is this? Why are you running this?" And these were fashion clothes. They sure don't, look like it. And they were very annoyed. This is a wonderful photographer called Bill Solano. We had many great opportunities, and mostly because of the accessories department. We had great shoe editors. We had great jewelry editors. We had great, and beauty. You could take much more liberties, and how wonderful. This was fabulous color that Solano had come up with. Really extraordinary. This was Hero, who did these extraordinary examples of science and art coming together. He loved experimenting, and we did covers sometimes that opened up that way and down because the editors sold advertising to get more money on the back, which was very smart. They don't do it anymore. This was a kids thing that was done on a trampoline in the studio by Hero, and that was me in Paris with Hero for a long time ago. And these were more Hero covers. I mean, they're brilliant. The thing I love about some of this stuff is, some stuff is dated and it should be, and there's nothing wrong with dated things. And some stuff you look at and go, well, that could work today. And I don't know why that is. I have no idea what makes one thing work and another thing get dated. This was another Hero thing. He did a lot of experimenting with sandwiching different layers and then creating one image. This was another Hero thing. That was a real bull. He would not do a fake leg. That was a real bull in his studio. Amazing. And the beauty of this is we had a great fiction editor who understood great writers, and she had Marion Moore do the copy for this, and Marion Moore didn't want to, but she did, and it's just, of beasts and jewels. I mean, imagine having Marion Moore write something to this. And this was a series. That was a real snake in that little green thing. And that was a real owl and a frog. And that was a real fish. There must have been 20 fish that were alive in a tank, and he grabbed one, and it got to take its picture, and it had to really look alive until the moment. And so those fish, gave their lives for posterity. But they're wonderful images. Wonderful, wonderful images. That's a Hero again. We sometimes did fabrics where you didn't have to show the shape of the dress, you had to show the fabric. And this clever concept was Heroes, where he put a plank of wood between two step ladders and shot down on the girl. I don't know the answer to that. You may have to give me some of your thoughts. But the only thing I do know is, years ago, movies were never considered art. And then eventually, some of them are considered art. I think some fashion photographs are, certainly considered art. Is fashion itself art? I don't know, but it's definitely in the realm of a high level of artistic ability and invention. I mean, I used to hold some of those dresses early on, Madame Grey and a few people early on, and I tell you, it was better than architecture. It was extraordinary what they were capable of doing. I don't know why that's not art and something else is. Okay, so I found that some Chinese philosopher said this, and I liked it. You need 3 things to make art. I mean, you could imagine how this was distilled down, but I think it's great. The hand, the eye, the heart. The heart meaning everything that had to do with depth and meaning. A lot of us do things that are decorative, and then you just need the hand and the eye, but you don't have the heart. And, this is a pretty simple way of trying to figure out, do all 3 exist? If in a certain piece you're looking at, that's great. If they don't, maybe that's not art. Dali was very angry at pop art taking over his reign. So in this picture that Dick took of him, he wrote over the picture, and I'm doing it again, and the end of the mustache, he wrote the word pop, meaning that he was kind of making himself relevant. And then I had asked Andy Warhol to do a series of paintings of cars, because we had to show cars. I don't think this is what they expected in the car industry, but they got it. So this was very early on, and he made these silk screens of cars and then lined them up in his studio and photographed them. This was a lovely postcard I got from the great Lartigue. I don't know if any of you know Lartigue, but he influenced a great many photographers of the day. And Bea made the most beautiful book of Lartigue's work early on. And, he was a hero because he photographed his family from the age of 8 in Paris. And those photographs you should all look at in terms of what great photographs of documenting your family is all about. And this was quite a family. They were very rich. And they also had a kind of a sense of sophistication and culture and fun. And he was a hero of all of ours. That's me with him. I mean, I'm very proud that I did a little bit of work with him, not much. This is just to show that we did graphics sometimes. It's just our graphics, yeah. And to show also that we didn't just do fashion pages. This was 71. It was kind of the end of our reign. We were both fired. And I thought that was a pretty good cover. How we got away with that, with not having an image, is again amazing to me. A lot of stuff we did was hated, but somehow, God bless her, she allowed it to be published. That's pretty amazing. That people really were skeptical and yet allowed it to be published. We need more of those editors today. Okay, Mel SOKOLSKY was a brilliant guy. I'm taking too long on Bazaar. I'm going to go through it. So this was a Mel SOKOLSKY shoot that has since 50 years later, his work is being shown in art galleries with these pictures as great pictures of the time. He constructed that bubble out of I think it was airplane level plastic, and he brought it over to Paris on his own dime because Bazaar wouldn't pay for it. And these incredible lyrical pictures came out of it. And he said he was influenced by Hieronymus Bosch. You know Hieronymus Bosch's painting of the bubble over the landscape? That's what he said influenced him. And Ali McGraw was a friend, worked in the studio, and she's one of those people. And she used to make little drawings. She's really very good at these, to indicate to Mel, well, you could fly this girl over the circus elephants. And then she would, show it. She did all the styling. Yeah, she was incredible. All these people were really very large talents, and getting them all together was a thrill. Guy Bourdin, who's another genius, who came over for a short 2 days from Paris, came up to visit, wanted a job. We didn't have anything, but there was some crazy lady from the beauty department who came running in with these nails, and we said, "That's it. Let's give that to Guy." And he took it and shot it overnight, and it ran. And this is a wonderful cover by Jimmy Moore. I mean, talk about design and ability sculpturally to envision something and make it work. And the purpose of it all is stockings. I mean, it's sort of extraordinary. This was Alberto Rizzo, who Bea worked with a great deal, and they did wonderful things together. This is quite a good quote. I believe that. I believe that. And that was Bea and myself, the lovely masquerade. And that was taken by Diane Arbus, I must say. I invited her to a party that I gave, which was the theme of the party was Hollywood, naturally, the movies. And I didn't have time to make a costume, so I ran into jewelry department and threw everything on myself and sewed it on. And of course, it absolutely was dripping off my body as I was dancing through the evening. And Bea came as Marlene Dietrich, much chicer and smarter. All she had to do was get a mask. And I was Lulu from the film Lulu. Louise Brooks. This was the set of pictures that Dick took of us. Again, not very unattractive, actually, because he sat us down without any makeup. We came into the studio. He was doing a little piece on us for Graphice, I think. And he said, sit down on the piano bench. And we sat on the piano bench, and he went click, 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 and that was the end. And that was it. This is Francis Bacon's, naturally, pretty good. And Iris Murdoch. Again, we did, we did many things. I'm taking a lot of time on this because I'll go faster in the end. The purpose of this is that all the seeds of what I did and learned about came during this period. And that's Bea and Bill King and myself, and Bill died of AIDS in the 80s, one of the great photographers. This is Bea's work, which is really brilliant. Imagine opening up a magazine and seeing that today. Wouldn't you have fun? I mean, wouldn't that wake you up? And then you go to the next thing, which is, maybe it's a woman in the studio. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you have the opportunity to see that variation. Okay, then we get into the New York Times Magazine. I left fashion, went to the Times Magazine, and decided to put my efforts into the cover of the magazine. The magazine was the only color being printed at that time. The rest was the 2.5 pounds of black and white, which was all the sections every Sunday. So I decided to make the covers posters. Didn't have to put cover lines on for the most part. Didn't have to sell it on the newsstand. And I struggled a lot because there was no time. And yet I had a lot of fun in the end. I really did. So these were the variations of the posters. And, one was Peter Beard. One I created that poster myself. I'm very proud of it, for the fight in Zaire. And because I always loved fight posters. And I had Roger Law, who's a brilliant maker of puppets in London, make these extraordinary puppets of the candidates for president. Can you imagine? They wouldn't allow that today. I mean, Reagan looking like a gaga idiot. And they let it run for the Times. I give them credit again. And this was Bill King, done the night before it had to go. That's how brilliant these people were. And Judith Jameson came to the studio, put on their dress. Bill had this great ability to make people move. It was like athletes. And he almost made them move so they almost moved so the movement became out of control, but he stopped it just at the point when it wasn't. And some of the great work was done by Bill doing that. There's no book of Bill's because he has an estate that is absolutely ridiculous, run by his sister, I think. And the man has never had a book. It's so, so sad. One of the great photographers. I had Andy give us this, and he had done something for Carter. I was interested in how sexy he was. So I picked this sexy picture, and it ran. I mean, he was pretty sexy. And, the variations interested me. And that was when New York was falling apart. Seymour Quast. So I did some illustrations. And this I love. I love this for a lot of reasons, but mostly the brilliance of Steinberg. He was asked to pose for this. And he took a picture of himself when he was a young boy, blew it up, and did the blow up, and then held his own hand. Now, if that's not great surrealist, thinking, I don't know what is. And it's one of my favorite pictures, and I was very proud to see that picture, old and curled at the edges on one of Avedon's boards. And I always felt, he liked that a lot. This was Gilles Perez, great photojournalist in Iran. This was drug addicts on the street, heroin addicts. And I got Helmut Newton to do this for the Times. I don't know how I got away with this one. But he did it, and they ran it. And this was when we had no chance to photograph anything, we took pickup pictures and colored them differently and put them together. And this was kind of terrific collage that Charles Churchwood, my assistant, then made. Then I went to House and Garden briefly and wanted to change my palette from all of the frenzy of doing a weekly, which kept me in bed every weekend. I was in bed every weekend, really, truly, because I had manuscript after manuscript to read, and then some of them were killed, and then you had to come up with one to be, the manuscript for that issue, and it was crazy. But I loved it because I knew I was working for a place that I had such respect for, as did all the people who I called and they said yes no matter what the deadline was. And I just loved the idea that these images would be seen from Moscow, to Montana. I love that people who wouldn't have known anything sophisticated would see this. And they sure would look at it because it was something they had to take a look at if they got the Sunday Times. So House and Garden, we did, I was there for a very short time. We tried to do something without type. It didn't quite work, but it was kind of fun. And I was very proud on this one to have gotten William Eggleston, to agree to photograph Graceland. That was a trip because I didn't know him. I knew of him, and I spoke on the phone with him. Had I known who he was, I probably would have been more frightened to speak on the phone with him. But he said, no, I don't want to do that. That's beneath me. And we kept back and forth, and he said, oh, all right, I'll do it. And he took some of the great pictures of the Graceland, and unfortunately I found out much later, very recently, somebody told me, that portfolio has never been able to be sold because the estate, must mean Priscilla, won't allow it because it's not under their, control. Isn't that awful? Yeah. This was Dwayne Michaels on the left, and I forget who that was on the right. I was just trying to clean up House and Garden and make it a much more sophisticated experience for the eye.
Who was the editor?
Lou Gropp might have been for a short. They kept changing on me. Yeah, Lou Gropp for a short time. Yeah. Nancy Novograd for a short time. They kept switching. I wasn't there that long.
Now, were you?
What?
I'll ask at the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Vanity Fair, the 80s. Quick. We know who that is. So, this is the intersection of celebrity. This is where Tina Brown was very smart. And it was the intersection of celebrity and the culture. And she was totally right. These were great. Annie Leibovitz. He had pretty great movement. Imagine, that's fantastic. This was inside layouts. Diane Keaton, who is always really hiding.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it's her personality. Covers herself up from head to toe, has a beautiful body, but that doesn't matter. And that's what she feels comfortable in. And a great artist, by the way. She's a great photographer. The answer to that is everywhere. I get inspiration everywhere, from the streets, from paintings, from other
magazines that I used to look at that weren't popular magazines. I get inspiration everywhere. It's not from any one anything that fascinates me, I remember in my brain and it remains there. Great. That was Helmut. That was Tina Brown's first. I think it was her first Vanity Fair cover, and we had to do it very quickly, and we had no time. And Helmut was out there, and he decided to give Daryl Hannah these barbells, which looked like an S&M. And it's typical of Helmut to bring it that one level. And she looked like she's blindfolded at an S&M party. It isn't a great picture, but it's a great moment. And that's Helmut photographing Annie at the Eden Rock. And Annie was very angry that I had this picture, but I think she's forgiven me. I don't even remember how that picture came into my world. And this is Helmut again. That's Helmut at his best, because this is Pina Bausch, something that he went to photograph. And the story goes that he told this young woman who had a pair of very high, old-fashioned white panties on. And he, as Helmut always does, all these people, by the way, are all seducers. They are brilliant at seducing. So many people are able to undress and get nude in front of these folks that it's really, you have to give them credit for being some of the world's best seducers. Whether they're women or men, doesn't matter. They have a way of making people feel, you must do this and you must trust me. And they trust them. So he had her take the panties off, and then he wrote something to the editor and said, listen, she didn't want to take her panties off, and I really was telling her that, listen, darling, you have to take her panties off. Nobody will know or recognize you and know who you are. And he was right. I may be her mother. It's great. This was another Helmut Newton shoot. Really fun. I mean, this is really, this is putting together. Yeah, this is so Helmut. It's putting together the real people, looking at these bra cones, and it's superb. We had Keith Haring do something quickly, and then of course this was the best statement made by any woman in the world of fashion, and that woman is Diane Arbus, who was fired from Vogue. Ignominiously, if that's what you say, fired from Vogue because she went too far with her grand and wonderful visions, which are the only visions worth having. And she took that magazine to a place that was so exciting. Anyway, she was fired at age 70, and she needed the work. She needed the money, and then she was put. People rallied around her and found a way to put money into the coffers of the Met, which had no money. And she became this extraordinary woman who made the Metropolitan Museum Costume Institute become one of a kind, great experience. And it was her who had a second chance in life. So I still, I look to her now as a woman in her 70s who is still thriving and proving that anything great can happen if you have the mind and the will to dream, and she did. More stuff. Lots of fun. Vanity Fair was fun. Vanity Fair was fun. That's not a happy picture of her. She's better looking than that. But this was her stuff, which I thought was pretty great. Pee Wee Herman. And then these were wonderful pictures of David Byrne. Just wonderful. And that's a famous picture, and it's wonderful again. It goes back to the thinking of these people. She does a lot of research, and apparently Whoopi had in her in her stage performance, a story about being a little girl, a black little girl, who always wanted to be white, and she thought if she took a bath in white milk, she'd become white. So that's the genesis of this great image. And you need to, Annie needed to know that in order to make that happen. This is also wonderful. I can't remember the name of the photographer, Junot or something great, but the hats were made, I think, by Karl Lagerfeld, and then this very inventive editor said, let's make they were made into little chairs, and let's make real chairs like the hats. So it was exactly the reverse. And the real chairs were made to match the little baby hats. And they're just delightful, absolutely perfect. And that's true. Everybody I've ever worked with really ends up saying that. Only shoot what you love. And when you got into trouble, and a lot of shoots didn't work when they didn't shoot what they loved, whether the shoots were things that they initiated themselves or whether it was an assignment that maybe at first they didn't even want to do. Bruce Weber is one of my heroes. Really, really. And this was a shoot that I loved that he took of Jessica, and this was out in Santa Fe, and that's when they were really, really in love. And I briefly, just it's funny, they were really, really in love, and Bruce came, obviously, to want to photograph Sam, and Sam was not having any of it. And we were about to leave. It was one of the few shoots I was on. I don't remember why. I never went on shoots. They never took me. I was so angry. But they didn't. I just didn't. I wasn't one of those lucky art directors. Anyway, it was 5:00 at night before the morning we had tickets to come back to New York, and up comes a Jeep. We were photographing her in an empty swimming pool. So up came a Jeep, and out of the Jeep came this handsome man in black shirt. Nails were clean, hair was perfect, and it was Sam Shepard. So, and the first thing he did is ran over to her, and they started to touch each other. They couldn't stop touching each other. And Bruce, because he's Bruce, somehow got them to say, yes, you can take the pictures. And these fabulous moments of truth happened. Apparently, Bruce made a book after that of just the Sam Shepard pictures. I mean, how beautiful were they both? I mean, they just, and I love that they're black and white. I mean, Bruce knows more about American photography, like Tina Modotti and Weston, than anybody I know. He's a real scholar about it. Then the New Yorker, briefly. Avedon, again, was asked by Tina Brown to become the in-house photographer. Anyway, and I always think that that's like asking Michelangelo to be the Sistine Chapel's house painter. So he was, and actually this was something that I did earlier for Dick, and this was the first thing that they ran in 1994. And this was a fold-out I created of Marilyn just to give it some different jazz look. And I had fun doing that. I never liked her until much, much later when I started to realize how brilliant she was as a comedian and as a person who understood her body and as a person who, whatever her neuroses were, and we all have them, she had neuroses that made her frightened to death till she had courage to get in front of the camera, and then something, totally transformed her. This was the last shoot that Dick did that I was involved in. I was a freelance art director in his studio for a very brief time. I was no longer working full-time for any magazine. And he wanted to do something like this, and it was 2004, and sorry, this is pretty prescient when you think of how young, look at how young Obama looks, and what they put him through. I don't know how he's withstanding it. But at any rate, the story about that is he hadn't finished the shoot, and he called me. I was in New York, and he was supposed to do 2 more people, and he called me with this wonderful phone message, and I could kill myself. I erased it by accident. And it was, Ruth, I'm having such an incredible time. I'm supposed to go to Fort Hood and photograph soldiers and a few more people, and I can't wait to show you the pictures and work with you on it. He had a brain aneurysm and went to the hospital in Texas and died. He was 81. That's working until the end. I love that that's what he wanted to do. And this was a poster I did. And the book that I did of, yeah. These were these wonderful, what is that called? Solarized, thank you very much. Solarized images, pictures that he did with Bob Bishop, who was really great at that. This was a magazine in Paris called Egoist, which is all black and white. And he loved the magazine, and he had quite a relationship with the editor. And they kind of edited the magazine together at a certain point. This is a lovely statement about models that I think is right. I never worked with Bert Stern, but he was certainly somebody appreciated. And when you think that he did Marilyn Monroe, that makes all kinds of sense. Dick did this for the Egoist, and that was, I happened to be there, and that was the meanest monkey that ever. I don't know how she had the nerve to put her face next to that monkey. It was scary. That monkey looked, oh God, I would never have had the nerve to do that. Anyway, it was a great picture. That's why it worked out. This was some ads, some commercial things I did with Dick for Versace. And this is a poster that I did for a show that Avedon did in LA. And he wanted me to do a very cheap poster, not expensive, and every part as it opened would be perfectly beautiful as itself. So every aspect of it should be beautifully designed. That was a trip. And I was happy with it, but a 2-sided poster that opened up and every part of it had to be, yeah, that was a trip. And he did a book on women with Susan Sontag. This was the purpose of the book was really to honor women and women who weren't necessarily well known, and to show the tricked up way that in Vegas, this woman walking in a supermarket none of us would look at. That's the same woman. That's the same woman, and that's what the commentary is about. This is what we do to women, to say that that's the woman that's desirable, and that's the woman that nobody would pay attention to. She's invisible, but she's more beautiful, actually. And there's a number of those combinations in the book. And Susan, wait a minute, now I can't remember.
Houdini?
Not Houdini. God damn it.
Darcy Kessler.
Who?
Is it Darcy Kessler?
No, it's the,
The ballerina?
no, the one on the left. I knew I'd forget her name. That's Laurie Anderson. Bravo, thank you. That's Laurie Anderson hanging upside down. That's, photographers get people to do everything. And that's Darcy Kissler. And then I did work with Peter Beard. I loved his letters were always great. Then I did this great big Taschen book of Peter's work, which I'm very proud of because the book itself is huge, one of those supersized books, which I am not in favor of, but it's impossible to do anything except get angry at them. But they are repositories of a certain kind of work. And Peter's diaries, in fact, work very well because his own diaries that he did collages that almost look like some of these. So I decided to make the book almost look like something a found object. I mean, these are his collages. Extraordinary. That blood is the blood of cows, not human. And then I designed a stand for it, which folds up. It was a stand that's origins came from a Koran. Korans have these kind of stands that do that, and we created a stand for it. So there was some way of looking at it. I love this quote. That's my favorite quote. I feel that no matter what I've done wrong, this absolves me. Thank you, Billy Wilder. And then the last thing is this great experience I had with a photographer named Tim Walker, and I did this book with him in London. I mean, he was in London, I was in New York. That's the beauty of computers, because we were able to work that way and saw each other seldom, but the few times we did, we were on the same track. So he was doing this book on fashion as fairy tales, and I was interested in the fact that Lewis Carroll is somebody he had a lot of love for. And so I decided to look at some of Lewis Carroll's work, and Lewis Carroll did some things that looked like concrete poetry. I didn't know that, but they were Lewis Carroll's designs with typography. So I decided to take my clue from that. And this was the inside, the cover, the outside cover was the paper cover. I wish I had done this with a cover, but I somehow wasn't smart enough to do that. And that's the hardcover cover. And these are all Tim's drawings. He was great. He was just a great mind again. And that's Tim. His mother was a baker. So that's Tim in that bed. You can see that he has a sense of humor. It's sensational. And that is a real size plane. He works with people like somebody in Hollywood he gets them to collaborate with him and makes these objects. And this is not Photoshop. This is a real picture of a real place with a plane. And then these were the things that I created that were all various quotes of Tim's. And I had a thrilling time working with him and the writer to get the quotes to work with the pictures, and he was willing to trim his quotes, or that's what great collaboration's about. And starting from the beginning, the word for me is collaboration. If you find yourself lucky enough to work with people who are willing to work with you when you haven't proven yourself, then it's all about collaboration. And that's what has pulled me through all these years. That's Grace Coddington. See, that configuration on that side is very much following Lewis Carroll's configuration. And my favorite, I'm a big fan of Tilda Swinton's. So, and that's one of his diaries. I mean, he's brilliant. He's just one of the great photographers I have ever worked with. He's only 40. And that was a few days before Lee committed suicide, he said. The fact that it has a skull is so eerie. I mean, they're meticulously photographed, they're beautifully crafted, and they're original. What else can you ask for? Now, there was a show at, what the hell, Somerset House, and Tim asked me to do the wall graphics after the book. And so he dragged in all these items. I mean, how lucky the people were to see this show. And that was one of the planes in one of the many things he did. And this was one of the wall graphics that we turned corners around. And so that's my saying to myself, stay relevant. Staying relevant is a lifetime job, and it is. And I dedicate this to, I don't know if any of you know Eiko Ishioka, who is somebody, one of the great, talk about women designers who led us all. If you don't know about her, get her book or look her up online. She not only started out as a great designer, she then worked with Coppola and did the costumes for Dracula, that great Dracula film that he did. Then she did the costumes for the Chinese Olympics, that incredible stuff that you saw that we all had our jaws dropping. She worked on all those costumes. And she was just a Renaissance woman of extraordinary talent. I met with her a few times. We respected each other. I respected her a hell of a lot more. But she was very important to me because she was a kind of a light of what you can do and how you can expand and how you don't have to stay in one lane if you don't want to. And I was stunned that she was gone because she had a lot more to do. So I dedicate that to her. And I thank you very much for coming. I'm so sorry it went long.
But thank
I'm
you.
sorry.
Do we have any questions from the audience?
Please, you had something, yes.
One thing, what was the nature of your interaction with the photographers, before a photo shoot,
It depended. I mean, it was. As I said, I didn't very often go on the shoots for whatever reasons. I think it was sexist in a lot of cases. I think a lot of male art directors did go on the shoots, but maybe I didn't speak up enough or whatever. I went on some, but I didn't go on many. So the truth is, you have conversations about the direction, but I think the kind of art direction that I really believe in, that represents me the best, is I indicate a direction, because I already know that by selecting that person, whether they're very new and just starting out, or whether they have developed a reputation before we work together, they already have a voice. And that's what I look for, is that voice. And then what I do is indicate a direction, not say, you must take pictures of these women doing such and such. No, that's their job. My job is just indicate a direction that opens up the possibilities to their talent. That's really when I feel I've done the best I can.
But that doesn't happen anymore.
What? No?
No? Sometimes, right?
Well, I mean,
I feel like the role of the art director, especially in magazines.
not in,
Well, because
maybe
they're-
not American magazines. I don't know. I don't look at magazines that much, surprise, surprise. But I mean, there are many European magazines that I look at, but a lot of the things I look at are like yearly, biannually, whatever. There's a lot of European magazines that are done by wonderfully talented people who, just decide to take it upon themselves to not do the 12 issues which I think are killing. They're very, very difficult. And your competition is, everything is about the bottom line and mediocrity. And it's like television, except for the wonderful fact. I mean, cable is one of the great things that's happened actually to a lot of actors and good writing in television. I think it's really opened up a whole new level of intelligence and intelligent writing and intelligent programming and invention. And that hasn't happened in American magazines. They've stayed with the same kind of concept, and that doesn't work.
No, but I feel like the art directors are no longer empowered to
Well,
hire the talent and say,
Or maybe it's.
here's a concept, run with it. It's so controlled now, there's just not that.
I don't think you ever say, here's a concept, run with it. I mean,
Well, but you know, you develop along the way.
but
Who's
I
controlling? You
think
read the manuscript.
Oh, yeah. No,
read
you
the
read the
manuscript.
manuscript, that's true. You read the manuscript and you pick somebody who you think, you know, would enjoy this and would put their effort into making it an individual voice. I mean, that's why when Roger Law, I knew about by looking at English magazines. I didn't know him personally. I think I met him once, but we went to Washington together, which was amazing, and walked into those Senate offices. They didn't know what hit them until afterwards, because he was doing these. He does something in Britain called spitting image, and he used to do Reagan and Nancy in bed. I mean, he used to do terribly funny things that were nasty and funny, and everybody loved that. And I adored Roger. He was a brilliant artist. So, yeah, I mean, in that case, we knew that we were going to do these puppet figures in abstract ways. I mean, we did Jimmy Carter looking, in blue jeans in a field of corn. Peanuts, field of peanuts, I'm sorry. Peanuts. Yeah, and we did the really wicked one was, oh God, what was the name of the Southern senator who was shot?
Wallace.
Huh?
George Wallace.
Yeah, we did George Wallace in his wheelchair, covered with in the sunset and on a porch, and he was covered with the Confederate flag as his blanket. That was pretty awful. And we ran it.
So if you ran into a situation like you're talking about, did you ever run into a situation where the place where you work didn't really, like what you were doing was too abstract for them or expansive or beautiful, minimal?
Listen, remember what you're seeing up there is the cream.
Right.
You're not seeing all the other stuff I did that had to, that I would not be happy to show.
Right.
But you do it because you have to, your obligation is to keep rolling along, and hopefully these things happen, and they make you, feel that there's some reason, and to be there, and that something good might happen again. But yeah, I mean, I think there's lots of things that are published in Vogue. I don't love Vogue as an entity, but if you take it apart and look at some of those portfolios, some of them are pretty inventive and pretty wonderful.
Or W.
It's just what?
Or W, like
W is
amazing.
one of the great examples of the New York-based magazines, or some of the things in GQ are really kind of wonderful. I don't know where great illustration is being done. That seems to have, I used to do a lot more illustration than what I showed here in the New York Times, because there was a reason to do illustration. But I didn't show it so much because I was talking more about photography. But although you saw some things there.
Sure.
Actually.
Very little.
I know. Very little. No, you're right. The balance of illustration, and look at today. What I think is very, I don't know what you all think, but I think the selfie world is disgusting. I think it's disgusting because, frankly, it's been done a lot better.
Yeah.
I don't think the idea is disgusting, but I think that the concept of thinking that you've discovered something, and you certainly haven't. It's been around a long time, and a lot better. John Pagosi, who's a very well-known photographer, who took the camera like this and showed himself and all his pals, who were Mick Jagger and all these. That was the original selfies that were done with more substance. But I hope that people know the difference between a level of photography in magazines, these are not art pieces, compared to what's going on in Pinterest and whatever the hell they're all called. It's really sad. You know, it's sad. I mean, listen, Polaroids did a better job than what's going on. Polaroids were kind of wonderful. Instant gratification. That's what the people want, is instant gratification. But below that level is this need to mean something.
Right.
And that's not the right way to do it. Yeah, we all want to be counted. We all want to feel that we'll be remembered. We all want to make some statement, I exist. But that's just a terribly boring way to go about it.
Yeah, but you know, if you have like, if people take selfies, you're seeing everything. You know, you're not seeing the edited ones. There could be nice ones around, but you know
I'm
what
sure-
I mean?
I'm
But you're
sure
just,
there
what
are.
it is
No,
that
no, I
it's
think-
blanketed. And so you see the
Well, I frankly don't look at any of it. 'Cause
yeah.
I
Well,
don't-
that's why
I
you
don't
don't
look at
like it.
No,
because
no,
you don't
I
see it.
look at everything that interests me at a point, and if it doesn't interest me, I stop looking at it. I don't have enough.
I get it.
I don't have enough time to involve myself with things.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
if I'm wrong, I'll be happy to admit
No,
that.
I'm just saying, it's like a blanket now, and there's no editing.
What do you think of them?
No, I don't see them either, but what I
Well,
see,
you're more oriented to
the
the
computer,
than I
yeah,
am.
but I don't spend my time there, but what I'm getting at is that whatever is there, it's not really
No,
edited.
let me,
They're not
let me,
artists doing them.
Yeah, no,
It's
it's just like
everybody.
people,
Yeah.
yes.
let me twist it to the other side. Anything can be good and worthwhile in the hands of a person
Yeah,
who's
exactly.
got something to offer. It's as simple as that. This is a group of people that think they have something to
Right,
offer.
it's everyone.
And it's not very,
Democratic.
it's not very scintillating so far. It isn't funny, it's
It's not
just,
good.
it's just boring.
Yeah, I agree.
Can I ask does anyone else have a question? Okay. Can I just ask a final question, which I didn't ask either of you in person when we were preparing? But when you all lived in the same building, did you know what you were each doing? I mean, so
Yeah.
you knew about each other's work? Did
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
critique each other's work on that level,
Yeah.
or? you
yeah,
did?
well, she lived upstairs, so it's like, hello.
I had to climb up more flights.
You had what?
I had to climb up more flights than
Oh,
you did. I was in the top
One more.
fifth. Oh, it was horrible.
And did you feel like you were, a part of something new and on the,
No, you
No.
don't.
or on
No,
the
because when you're
verge?
living it, it's like
No,
we're living
yeah.
this now. Do we
No.
feel like we're a part of something? We could be.
The only thing I
And we
remember
probably
about,
are, but do we feel it?
the only thing I remember Gloria used to have, I mean, she was always a pretty exquisite piece of work. I mean, pretty beautiful. But she would go clicking down the stairs in her mini skirts and jump into a limo of Bob Benton's, right, from Esquire.
Wow.
She was having a good time, and look at who she is. How good that's all part of the history.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, and she's so wonderful, nice person.
I
I mean-
remember coming down to your place and there was an ironing board up all the time.
What
I
did
don't
that
remember
mean?
who was ironing.
No, well, you were just, you were.
Glorious time.
Okay. One more question.
Oh, actually, it's not a question, it's a story.
Yes, ma'am. We
I
worked
worked
together.
Yes, we worked together, and it was, I went into work at Vanity Fair one weekend, and you were in there with Annie. And it was when she had first started working with Annie Leibovitz, and I was in the other room, and of course I was like eavesdropping on everything you guys were talking about, and she was getting ready to shoot someone for you, and she's like, I don't know what to do. I don't really know what to do. And you said, just pull out the interest, and she said, what do you mean? What do you mean? And you're like, find the one thing that's interesting about them and exaggerate it.
Did I say that?
Yes, you did. And I said, oh, that's what an art director does. They inspire photographers.
Well, that's what I mean by just giving them a direction.
Yeah.
Just indicating
Yeah.
something, but not, thank you.
But she was just starting out, because she'd only been working like a month or two.
She knew what to do.
Yeah.
Well, thank you
Thank you all
for
for
coming.
coming.
Thank you.